Okay, we're going to be good to go in about 5 seconds from now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees can now hear you.
Welcome, everyone. This is Frank Accela from the Outsourcing Institute. I'd like to welcome each of you to our presentation today. We have a great presentation. This is two topics that rank very high within our membership network as to interest. One is really anything to do with outsourcing to China these days has created a tremendous amount of interest and intrigue amongst many of you. We've also, over the past year or so, received many questions and a significant amount of interest as to how does one increase value within their outsourcing relationship, right? Just, beyond price, if you will. So we're fortunate in that today's presentation will actually address both of those. One is this is a Chinese, an outsource to China scenario, and we have both the provider and the client speaking. I will introduce them in a moment. And we're really going to be talking about a scenario that many of you are challenged with today, which is, dealing with, the pressure toward overhead and lower cost. And on one hand, how do you increase productivity? It's a challenge that any business manager has based on the current climate. So our first presenter is Dr. Robert Lee, who's CEO of Achievo Corporation, and he will present first. And at the back end of Robert's presentation, we will segue right into Richard Morrey, CTO over at Accela. And Richard has a very interesting story to tell as to why he outsourced to China, why he outsourced to Achievo. And before I pass the baton to Dr. Robert Lee, I also would like to thank Dr. Lee and the team at Achievo for making this webinar possible for our members. Thank you very much. Dr. Lee?
Thank you, Frank, and welcome everyone to this webinar. Every day that we turn on be it TV or the newspaper, all we hear about is the financial crisis and which company is laying off how many people. These are, of course, challenging times that I don't think any of us are immune from. Obviously, cost cutting is very, very important. However, I think you will all agree that having cut costs alone, while necessary, is not going to make our businesses successful. In fact, whoever is best prepared when the economic conditions returns to a more favorable climate will be the company that will emerge stronger from this recession, if you will. So we better be well prepared for that because our competitors certainly will be very well prepared. The business challenges that we face, of course, involve controlling cost and therefore generating a margin that will keep our business viable even in the face of the challenges that we all see in the marketplace. But time to market in terms of positioning our companies to be better from a competitive point of view and making sure that our customers are satisfied not only about what we are doing for them now in this very challenging market, but that what we are doing creates something that makes us a good partner in the long run are equally important. So while controlling costs is important, making sure that we are well positioned to be competitive and satisfying our customers are things that no doubt all of us are very focused on. And this is where outsourcing can play a very important role. I'm sure as businessmen we have all thought about, heard about the importance of outsourcing because of cost reasons. And whether one outsources to India or to China, which are the main locations now when it comes to software and IT, there is a significant cost benefit, even on a fully loaded basis, for using resources in China. And that obviously is very important. But in most of the so-called developed economies of the world, we also face a situation where we have shortages of certain types of IT talents in our respective labor markets. And of course, this is quite well known to us. And they are, of course, also related to cost as well. Many companies also outsource for reasons of flexibility in terms of addressing a dynamically changing labor force requirement, not necessarily just in numbers, but also the kind of skill base as well. And then increasingly, companies are looking to build new markets, either because they want to enter new markets by adding capabilities to their own product lines so that they can broaden their own opportunity base. And increasingly, when it comes to China, many of our clients see China as an interesting market for themselves as well. And therefore, outsourcing to China to help them penetrate that market, particularly as a partner of Achievo, which is very well established in China, makes a lot of business sense to these folks. So let me just very briefly talk about who we are at Achievo. Achievo is a pure-play software service company. All we do is software and IT services. We do not sell products of our own because we focus our energies on helping our clients with their software and IT service needs. We do a lot of software development outsourcing. We do IT service management, and we do IT-related BPO services as well. Achievo was founded 7 years ago, aspiring to build from the ground up a world-class global company serving clients all over the world with world-class standards. Today, when it comes to a truly global company, we're the largest pure-play provider with a China backend with more than 2,300 employees worldwide. And you see on the map some of the major cities where we are located. And you can see that in addition to US and Canada, we're very well established in Europe, as well as in China and in Japan. Now, why is this important to you? What we have found is that having a significant presence in the various countries where our clients are located make us an extremely easy supplier to work with, because in those cities that you see, not only do we have sales and service salespeople, we have actually significant numbers of service people that can work alongside with our clients. And then we can also contract and take accountability of that business relationship directly with those clients in those locations. And that's why we have offices all over the world servicing our clients, which I'll talk about in a moment as well. And in China itself, we're located in many cities because there are various reasons why clients would want to do business with us in China, being a very large country in different places. And those reasons might include that they themselves might have offices in different cities in China, or they want to enter the China market and having a large footprint in China help facilitate that, or they have other reasons why it is more convenient for them to be located in different parts of China. Those all add up to a very important reason why we really want to be in all those cities in China. Now, we sort of skip ahead to the next chapter. Before I talk about our clients, let me just point out that being a world-class global company is more than just declaring that we are so, but we operate as one single integrated company worldwide. We see that our processes, business, or technology are quite transparent to our clients, and then we focus on what matters most to our clients in addition to cost, which is that we can deliver quality and give them the proper security in delivering our services. And that includes being classified and certified by the highest quality and security standards in the world. Now let me talk about some of our customers and the market that we serve. As you can see from this chart, in 4 main industries, we have a significant presence. We have some very well-established major clients that we have done business with for many years. In the auto industries, we have clients like Daimler, Mercedes-Benz, Chrysler, Audi, the German, the U.S., as well as the Japanese auto manufacturers. And these are big clients of ours. For example, Audi is our second largest client that we have. So we're very well positioned in the auto industry. In the financial industry as well, in the insurance, for example, we're very well positioned. In the telecommunications areas, you can see that we do business with many of the telecom companies. One that is particularly noteworthy that I often like to point out is the fact that in China itself, China Mobile is a major client of ours, as well as China Telecom. And I use this to point out the fact that it isn't just about cost. It is about the world-class service standards that we deliver. Obviously, we don't have a lower labor cost than what companies like China Mobile can get in China itself. However, being world-class companies themselves, they want to see that they work with a company that can be a partner in delivering world-class services to them. The technology industry actually represents the largest industry in terms of revenue for us. And as you can see, we work with the highest level companies in this industry, in the U.S., in Japan, as well as in other places that we deliver services for these clients as well. I mentioned just now that we provide world-class services certified by the various standards organizations. That includes IT and IP security for ISO 27001. All our labs in China and in Japan, for example, where people ask us questions most often about, we're certified for ISO 27001 security. And then, of course, ISO 9001 as well as CMMI Level 5 pertains to quality and certified as well. And in terms of technical competency, we really are quite well versed in having done projects involved in all the technologies and software types that you see listed here as well. Now, I can talk about Achievo all day long, but I think better than that, let me ask one of our major clients, Accela, to tell you about their experience in working with us. And we're very fortunate to be able to invite Richard Morrey, who is the CTO of Accela, and tell you about his experience in using our services. Rich?
Well, thank you, Dr. Lee. It's a privilege to be here with you this afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon to you. I'd like to how Accela has found success in software development outsourcing in China. Let's see if I've got control here. I'm trying to control the screen here. There we go. Oops, too far. Outsourcing has been largely successful for us. We believe, however, that there are fundamental keys to that success. And what we've learned through trial and errors are some things, hopefully, maybe that'll help some of the rest of you make mistakes as you enter into this. I'd like to also discuss the concept of outsourcing as a type of energy supply model that we believe is especially important given the current economic situation. and I think it's important to consider that, and as I talk about this, the nature of our product, I think you'll understand that we have a significant product that where we are now the leading provider of government enterprise software solutions. We provided a multitude of types of government agencies with the ability to work data from a central database. We accomplish that through the automation of asset records, land records, the processing of licenses, permitted applications for public safety and health and building departments. Our products allow agency to reduce their workload and increase efficiencies, and most importantly, provide citizens and businesses with easier and more convenient access to government services. Now, you can imagine that these systems consist of mission-critical data and processes that become the backbone systems for local and state government. We've been fortunate to government agencies worldwide in nearly the past 30 years. These agencies are located in the United States, Canada, Puerto Rico, and most recently in the United Arab Emirates. Giving you some background on Achievo. We deal mostly with their operations in Shenzhen in the People's Republic of China. Shenzhen is a fairly short hop from Hong Kong. It's about 20 miles north as the crow flies. Their facility there is modern, equipped with reliable communications, and we depend on the services of about 150 engineers and quality assurance personnel in their Achievo facilities there. Accela was created in 1999 from a three-way merger of three companies that you can see here. In May of 2001, the further consolidation of market competitors occurred when Accela acquired Achievo Systems, which was my company, in August of that same year. We, since that time, acquired a new product line for asset management through the acquisition of Sussex Business Systems in December of 2002. At the completion of the merger with Kiva, I was appointed Senior Vice President of Engineering and the Chief Technology Officer for Accela. Now, as you can imagine, all of the above companies have compliance. The move was to really consolidate the market, and as you can imagine, this rapid acquisition resulted in a huge task for our company and also for me and my teams. We, at the same time, pretty boldly to our customers that we would continue to develop and support all 5 legacy product lines until the customers were ready to migrate to our flagship product. That flagship, however, at the same time was in need of structural and a pretty heavy user experience overhaul. So we began outsourcing to the newly formed Achievo in Shenzhen in 2002 and been pleased to be able to continue to use them since to provide us with sorely needed development bandwidth. Outsourcing has been successful for us. I'm to say that we're able to handle 4 of the 6 product lines with full development and code support. And in addition to that, we have 4 add-on products that are supported by the Achievo resources there. I'm also pretty pleased to be able to work compared to our U.S. resources. And also what I think is important is one technical level equivalency with Achievo. Now, in talking about this, however, I think there are 2 main factors in our success with outsourcing with Achievo. These are having a compatible corporate strategy and attitude. Now, I'm going to talk about what I think are really more structural than process, as we might think of when we typically think of outsourcing. Let me start with the corporate strategy. I think the strongest reason, from our experience to outsource, is that there's a set of work that we need to do that's going to make a major impact on the company. As Robert has indicated, soft outsourcing to reduce the cost of product development and support, and to also accelerate product time and market. Fortunate, I think, to enter into this early on, so that as we're facing the current economic situations, I think we're in pretty good shape. But therefore, what the net result of our outsourcing has been actually is provide better competitiveness. Now, obviously, better competitiveness can therefore increase the revenue and profit for the company. Now, these factors also fundamentally improve the financial performance for our company while currently driving down. In my mind, ultimately, our company's decision to outsource is based on the idea that I'll take part of our resources to invest in building up an offshore team and to help me evolve economically so that I can use this as a competitive advantage. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. Our primary motivation, again, and following is number is to reduce our development support costs for hopefully all 5 of the product lines. This was a huge undertaking, and may I add that it was a bold move given the headcount who were already uncertain about their jobs and recent mergers and acquisitions, not unlike our current market situation. Our designated flagship product called Accela Automation was the first fully developed web-based solution for all of our competitors. Strategic decision, we wanted to also be the first to market with a portal-based version, and this therefore necessitated an upgrade in going from a 2-tier to a 3-tier architecture. And not only that, but sales and marketing was also demanding the ability to support a Microsoft SQL version, server version, whereas we'd been predominantly Oracle to date. So this, in the middle of all of the above, we request. Now, what I'd like to do in terms of this structural approach is talk about 2 preparatory steps in developing an outsourcing strategic relationship. Well before we developed the contract, we felt that it was important to have a long-term funding plan that must be worked out, and this should be worked out, in my mind, in your company to make sense of the effort, first and foremost. And then the key to build a joint vision, a staffing plan, and a contract model with the intended resource. Now, in terms of talking about this, this is kind of I think a key point here is that we're going to talk about this in the sense of what we call an R&D success spiral. And it begins this way. Let's say if I were a company, I'd say, or your company, you know what, right now I spend about 500 headcount in my R&D expenses, or otherwise, whatever your case may be. And I'd like to set a milestone that in 2 years from now, that for the same amount of work, I'll pay for the equivalent of 400 headcount. So using the hypothetical headcounts as shown, if I drop 500 headcount and 10, that idealistically represents a 20% drop in R&D cost, other things being held consistent. Yet as management, and this was certainly our case, I want to achieve an increased productivity of 20% in order to meet our market goals. In essence, folks, this is trying to do 20% more with 20% less, which almost sounds pretty important. Well, this is really the picture we were looking at the time of the R&D budget drastically to get our margins where they should be. Yet at the same time, we needed that flagship product that would not only attract an attractive platform for our current customers to hopefully migrate to in the future, but also to win a greater portion of the market share. Now, was key to our seemingly impossible task of increasing the effective headcount by outsourcing. First, if I take this example here, for 2009, I may take an additional 50 headcount from my U.S.-based resources to fund using a 1-to-3 ratio, 3 times as many headcount as my contract company, my overseas company. So it results in a net increase of 50 effective headcount for 2009. Following this same logic, then, at the beginning of 2010, if I take an additional 100 U.S. headcount to fund an overall outsourced headcount of 300. Therefore, as you can see, I have the benefit at the end of 2010 of having now for what was really the cost of 400. I know this may sound brutal, but even back then for that time, because of the mergers, this was a matter of survival and growth. It was an economic reality for us then, but I think it plays into our current situation. Now using, as you can see, based on a 1-to-3 cost mix, in other words, one U.S. engineer being equivalent to achieve the desired 20% reduction in cost by the combined headcount workforce. Now, if to added efficiencies to even increase that to 1-to-4 headcount cost ratio, my total R&D cost drops by about 25%. And as I mentioned at the outset, we're somewhere between a 1-to-3 and a 1-to-4 cost ratio right now. Now, as I present back what I introduced at the beginning of this R&D outsourcing success spiral. And if you would, please read with me from the bottom up. So now that I've reduced my headcount cost, as you read from the bottom up, what I can do is I believe I can drop about a 2% net profit to the bottom line in this fundamental model. So that's a model change. But because of that, more development capacity, in my example, I increased that capacity by 20%. I theoretically can gain more market share because of the improved time to get, and theoretically, and the case has been for us, that we've been able to significantly gain market share. And in fact, what that does, if you're gaining market share then, is that drives more revenue. On action bottom dollar basis, because my top line is going up, what was originally a 2% now has actually become, compared to that originally 2% is actually 5% from where we started with. Now, naturally, and ironically, because of the above, I can afford a bigger R&D budget based on a percent allocation, and therefore, in reality, my 300 headcount in outsourcing combinations become 350 in the U.S. and 500 in the outsourcing company, and so on. Now, as you can see then, by means of the strategic spiral, then we go back to the bottom and continue going up, and it just completes itself. Now, the next step in finding an outsourcing company, and I think this is important to follow along with this, is that the idea is to look at the partner that can really build a factory for me. What we're talking about is not dangling a little widget in front of this company and saying, hey, let's see if you can build this for me and cheaper. And oh, by the way, I'm a tough customer. You've got to prove to me that you can do this. And oh, by the way, don't expect any profit from this. This should be a loss leader for you because you want to deal with me, right? Not the proper attitude. What I'm talking about really is more of a win-win attitude of being up front with a company that you think is the reasonable source and saying, I want you to build a factory for me, and it's going to be a long-term relationship that results in a longer-term investment. What I'm planning on doing is handing off a substantial amount of strategic work as confidence in making is gained, that will result, represents an investment in a factory for me, which is really a two-way commitment. So with that vision committed to by both sides, we still haven't even talked about a contract, right? So the contract for now might be as simple as saying, okay, outsourcing company, in this case we're talking about Achievo, I want you to build up for me a development center in China. And that's essentially what Achievo has Accela now. And whether or not there are actual physical walls around that factory, it's kind of irrelevant at this point. The sample plan that we had was really focused on headcount in the next period of time. In this case, we're talking about in this next year. As I gave it the hypothetical example, which was to get 300. So whatever the case is, we jointly and openly set goals together with that looked at this being a factory. This gives them a certain expected capacity plan for them, and say basically, I'm building this capacity for you, and you know, in our sense, it's reasonable for them to ask for some money up front to get it going, but that's part of the details. Then when we talk about the contract, really, then the contract is really relatively easy for them. So, and that is that it's commitment for headcount at the negotiated headcount rates, whatever they end up being. Now, within the framework of that contract in this headcount factory, then the POs will be issued for specific projects. And this is where your operational people will ultimately identify the projects, right? And these turn into job descriptions that then will make the specific skill sets. When the workers are and so on, and et cetera. And then the projects at that time are managed in whatever style that both sides agree to. And that's really, it's built up from there. So that's really kind of the contract and capacity side of it. And it's really brief. But you notice what's happening here is we're essentially separating the project from the contract and the model. Now this obviously assumes that both sides of this deal operate in good making those plans. And that there are some already initial estimates internally as to what they can be assembled by type of project. So that's really the highlight of our motivation. Now, the way to make this a success is that it should be viewed as both a strategic investment, a strategy of that company that after the period of time, and this is where I talk about the secret it's created that can be applied as a competitive advantage that Robert talked about. Basically, this is helping in the execution of your company. You know, and to be honest with you, most companies believe that they know what needs to be done, and they believe that they have a reasonable strategy. But I'll tell you what, if you don't, outsourcing really won't help you. It's a powerful weapon to do the wrong things, and that's not a good thing if it's doing the wrong things. But number one, given a reasonable strategy, most companies simply fall short in their ability to execute, and outsourcing in that case can really become an important part of the arsenal in solving that problem. Now, having made this investment in this power source, then it's kind of like energy. This is a development capacity that can be used to do many things, like with product innovation that I'm talking about, and as the market, you get that the different areas as needed, or that as prices change. You know, I originally had this as rising, but pricing right now is fluctuating. So as you look at this energy source, you know, as prices are fluctuating now, we really don't know what's going to happen, but we have that situation where things, also we have the market changes, where we're looking at potentially market shrinkage in your respective areas. But I think finally, and this is going to, I think, be the case with our clients, is that they're looking at reductions in personnel, and in our market, that's going to require more product innovation. I'd like to talk about the second of the 2 points that I think have been a significant for our system. And I can certainly attest to this through direct relationship. And I feel that strongly that the right attitude by both sides is critical to the successful outcome. You know, in subcontracting, particularly outsourcing, many make the mistake of thinking that I'm here to test you and that I'm better than you. Thing. But you know, I have to admit that we've had that kind of problem with different managers in our company, and that's where our people have slowly realized that, guess what? Now, these people in China are, generally speaking, really put more credence to seniority and to their superiors than we are actually used to here in the United States. It's been truly manifest here. And when it comes to a client and outsourcing contractor relationship, things are generally different in dealing with aggressive management. Well, we found out, tried to act tough with the people in China, but the Chinese don't necessarily want to fight it out as a cultural upbringing of courtesy and respect for their superiors. Now, some of our managers mistook that for being lack of responsiveness, and as you can imagine, over time, the weakness when really it wasn't. It was a matter of courtesy, and therefore some of our managers even pushed harder, and that threw things into a tailspin initially. But our successful managers soon learned that they were so overwhelming and that we put the other side into a tailspin, and so those that have been successful have realized that it's counterproductive to be putting into a superior position. I can tell you that those that didn't learn that are no longer with us. I think, and perhaps it comes to two groups working together. Most people think about communications being the primary issue. Agrees to, but what does it really mean? The way I look at it is simply two groups of people working together, whether it's 2 floors away or in a building next door or across the ocean. It's basically two groups of individuals that must work together as one group. In order for this to be useful, it must be on the premise of trust and respect. I think that this transcends anything else. That if you've got your managers and administrators that are attuned to this concept of outsourcing and do their due diligence, and whatever finding is, they must to the point of being emotionally able to respect your outsourcing entity. Otherwise, I say don't let them run the project. Because there's now that we're hooked up, right? So it doesn't matter, again, like I said, whether or not it's outsourcing to China or a subcontractor across the street. It's a thing basically about the sensitivity. It's communication styles. It's cultural differences that come into play, etc. It's not complicated. It's just a little bit about sensitivity. But it's a high-level thing. So again, in short, I think it's key, therefore, to find a company and a group that one is willing to work with, you're willing to trust and treat as peers, and having done so while treating these people as capable peers, expect the outcome accordingly. And all of the project management and communication and all that stuff. But it's really viewed as a mutual investment. And again, I can attest to you that if people are trying to look for problems, it's pretty easy to find them, to threaten people. There's plenty of that. But again, in terms of being joined at the hip, if you look at this as a journey where there's a long-term commitment, then you get people that are willing to work and will be a lot more successful as a result. So in summary, I think what I've talked about really is that it's a matter of having a plan with a strategy that is one that you can put in place for a long-term solution, strangling the widget, and then having people that are committed in your organization. And that's really key to this whole thing. What I'd like to do is basically remember that, well, first of all, that Outsourcing to Achievo, I think, has really helped us accomplish what we've endeavored to do, and I'm actually glad that we have done that. Now, especially considering the current economic situations where we've got that power source that we can redirect. That power source is really one that we view as our secret energy source, and I can attest to the fact, now looking back, that it really has catapulted us into realms of profitability and income that I never would have imagined before. With that, I think I turn it back over to you, Frank.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rich. Great presentation. And thank you, Dr. Lee, as well. For those of you in attendance, if you haven't already submitted a question, now's a good time if you have one. There should be a button somewhere on your screen that says questions. You should be able to key it in and just send it right over. So, again, if you haven't already, several of you have already, feel free to do so. So a couple of questions. Let me lead off with really just one tactical question someone had asked. It has to do with copies of the presentation. And so the answer is yes, copies will be made available. Kate, what is your recommendation for those who are looking for copies of the PowerPoint?
What we can do is in the follow-up email that will be coming out after the webinar, we'll go ahead and include an email address where they can send a request for the presentation.
Okay, fair enough. So everyone in attendance here will get a follow-up email. At that point, there will be a person and or an email, if you would, you can respond to. So, Rich, my first question to you is, there's something you mentioned that really kind of jumped out at me. You referred to the demo widget example, if you will, basically saying, this is not the way to do it. However, as we've seen, speaking to many executives who have been outsourcing for a while, this is indeed the way they typically do it. It's the way it's typically done, right? Here's a small project.
Right.
See how you do. Don't expect to make any money on this. The price is really good. We'll give you a shot with another one. So I'm just wondering, what was different about your environment that allowed you to really look at this more holistically and kind of start the right way, if you will?
A great question. And I think that has a lot to do, as you can imagine, with our circumstances. We were really, back then, our economic factors or our economic crisis was not too much unlike what we're dealing with right now, and that is because of our consolidation, we really had to have a silver bullet here that we could fire at this problem, and we had to consolidate and reduce our costs dramatically. And so, if you will, we were basically in the same situation we are now as a country economically, and so we looked at this, fortunately out of necessity. We had to do something. We had to do something quick, and so out of necessity, we're forced to look at the bigger picture, and we really didn't have the time to deal with the dangling widgets and so forth. So from the outset, we really looked at it different. Easy for us to spend the time doing the testing and testing different companies and all that. But I think, fortunately for us, and this is the key thing, it was that commitment to the long-term plan and the long-term strategy that actually forced us to do that. If we'd have done it the widget by widget period of time, we would have run out of time.
Okay, fair enough. So you didn't have much of a choice, basically.
Well, this is Robert. This is Robert. Can I also add to that, please?
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between doing a pilot project from doing a test widget. Okay, and a lot of that maps back to Rich's point about strategy and attitude. The strategy and attitude is to use outsourcing, and the attitude is not about, prove it to me, then maybe I'll think about it. That's a different attitude from, our strategy is to do it. We're strategic partners, and let's have a pilot project to make this work. And obviously, if it doesn't work, then one has to think about how to correct that. And if that cannot be done, then obviously the relationship become challenging from then on. But I think the difference is back to the strategy and the attitude and the notion of a pilot project versus I'll toss you a little demo project and prove it to me first before we talk.
Okay, it makes sense. I have another question here from our audience, and this question is to you, Richard. How did Achievo address IP protection issues?
Well, that's pretty good. Fortunately, China has come a long ways in terms of IP, and as you can imagine, this is a real issue for our clientele being government entities. And so we actually have agreements with Achievo that, first of all, is the first line of protection that protects us with the IP, and then we feel reasonably comfortable with now the IP protection opportunities that not only Asian participants in that area now have implemented that give us protection. And Robert, you might be able to address that from your perspective across the board, but we feel pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, let me elaborate on that. This is something that every client is concerned about. And like Rich said, having the ability to contract, in the case of Accela with Achievo in the U.S., of course, is one premise of the many factors that can contribute an overall security plan. There are many steps that Achievo has done to ensure that the assets of our clients are well protected. And in fact, getting 27001 certification make it simple for us to explain that to people as well. Achievo have all the classic physical security provisions that one would expect in the best practices of the world. But we also have our management processes and the facilities to back that up with. And most importantly, we preach it and teach it as part of our culture and training, including what we call Achievo University, which is an internal training program, for example, that we use in Achievo, that touches on many subjects, including things like security as well as quality. And also, one of the reasons that we think that we have put so many locations in China is that we have even the ability to have projects be done at different locations, should that be an important consideration for our clients, just to see that the various information assets are not at one place. So there are many factors that together we have never had a compromised security situation in the history of the company for our clients.
Super, thank you. Thank you both. Another question is, what other, I guess this is to you, Rich, what other geographies did Accela consider?
Well, we've always considered, we've had a lot of contact with particularly resources in India. Achievo is our only considered resource in China. I think, again, coming back to the point here is there's some other factors here that are very appealing to us in terms of China, and that is we've long looked at the Asian market and that part of the world is actually an opportunity for us in the long term. Now, we're at this point right now, we're actually now just starting to move into that part of the world. It's an opportunity for our sales. And this is actually really fitting nicely with that, is because as you deal with places like Macau or Hong Kong or Kuala Lumpur and that part of the world, it's really an advantage to us now to have an established support and development center in that part of the world. And So again, as a long-term corporate strategy, that's really more of, Achievo fits more of that model for us.
Okay, great. You had touched, Rich, at another point that comes up quite often, and that has to do with the cultural connection, or in many cases, what's the cultural disconnection from A. So I guess my question is, what is your advice to others, regardless of where you outsource to? Is the onus on the client to get better at this? Is the onus on the service provider? Does everybody need to make sure they understand the other side? What is your advice?
Well, I think it comes down to two factors. One of them is training. Staff training is very important, not only in terms of the cultural differences, but also technical. And, outsourcing is, people feel that their jobs are being threatened, and then they say, well, why on earth are we going to some place where we're maybe even having station differences? But I think in order for it to be a win-win situation, both the customer company and for the customer staff, and also for the client, that they need to commit to training, and in order to leverage the both. Now, culturally, to me, it's irrelevant whether or not it's, like you say, it's India or China or wherever. There are going to be cultures. No other way about it. Once you make that commitment, it does take an investment on both sides to learn to bridge that cultural difference. But I think the key thing about it is what I've mentioned before, is trust. Now, for me personally, I'm going to throw in that this has been actually a dimension in my life that I find tremendously rewarding. In other words, being in a position, I'd never been to China before we had this engagement, but I've been there. I just completed my 8th trip there, and I've actually tremendously personally benefited from that relationship. It's an investment on my part, and those people that from my company that have had that similar experience to learn that. Now, there's some people that just are totally averse dealing with anybody overseas, and particularly China, in their minds with a different mindset. And we just have to basically keep those people in the background, not force them to be on the front lines. So, but there are other people who are just more than welcome to get to know China culturally, and I can say it'll probably be the same with India. This isn't a plug for Achievo, but I can tell you what, personally, China has a wealth of things to offer in terms of the bottom line is once you've got the commitment, then a lot of things will come by their way.
Okay, thanks. Rich, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Super. I just want to make sure we didn't lose you. I actually have a bunch of questions, so let me squeeze in a few. I know we're short on time here. You had touched on, you had referred to 20% of reduction in headcount, resulting in a 20% increase in productivity. Dr. Lee, maybe from your perspective as the organization providing that upside, can you talk a little bit more about that? This question has to do with really, could you expand upon that? It seems to defy physics, right?
No, not really. Not really. We haven't made that breakthrough yet. But I think what Rich is saying is that there is a lot of room to maneuver when it comes to cost and productivity. Once one is able to achieve what Rich said, which is about a one-to-one technical competency, okay, then the cost advantage becomes that of math. Now, obviously, everyone will have a little difference in experience, and every project would vary as well. But just the math alone can help Rich get there. And of course, Rich is also talking about an operation that is operating quite successfully for a number of years. And so therefore, that strategic investment that Rich has made from his company, as well as Achievo has made from our company, have allowed this long-term strategic vision to be fully monetized, if you will. So I don't think actually it is very complicated. It is, as what Rich says. Now that this thing is operational, he's able to derive the strategic return for that investment. So that's why the strategy is so important.
Rich, would you add anything to that?
No, I can attest to that. It's and I can speak from experience. This is not hypothetical. We've actually been there, accomplished it. So while it may sound hypothetical, it's not. It's reality for us, and I can attest to the fact that this has been it's worked.
Okay, next question, and unfortunately I would not be able to get to all of them, but let me squeeze a few more in. The real cost of outsourcing, and I will quote this question. The real cost of outsourcing, from my experience, revolves around ability to get a team to full productivity quickly and with high quality. How is Achievo providing transparency into performance management? Rich? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. In other words, maybe elaborate on it a little bit so I make sure I'm on the right level here.
So the question really has to do with what transparency that you have into the actual performance management, Achievo's performance management.
Well, again, performance management, and I have to say this, that we didn't accomplish this one-to-one at the outset. There's been a period of time where we put more in terms of the investment into that relationship. In other words, of bringing people up to speed. I talked about this. The staff training is critical.
Mm-hmm.
There's two elements of that. It's both the technical and the soft skill training that are critical. I think the technical training, first of all, establishes the golden standard of quality and style, which you have to have. And I look at that as being a three-legged tripod, if you will. In other words, having the people that have the right skills, using the right tools, and of course working now and learning your corporate or your development culture. And but you want to invest in the training to help do that, and not just say, I'm going to throw this over the fence here and see how you can do it. It's commitment there. Now, the second part of that, which is the soft skill training, is learning, helping staff communicate effectively and interact with the customer. And there's been a number of things that have really helped in that aspect. Of course, the product itself, we use things such as the modern development software tools that makes managing a project seamless. In other words, the source control, and we use Subversion or SVM for that, change request systems, defect reporting, test case management, product lifecycle documents, and software and development testing environments. Other things such as web conferencing, email, instant message, telephony, and I've got to tell you that probably the biggest thing that makes a difference right now, and I think is a godsend. That really is where we've gotten our transparency from, is working that way, and that's then this at times that's been a challenge to us, but now having these other systems in place, it actually has turned into an advantage for us. In other words, we have the appearance of being a 24-hour-a-day company. but it's taken a while to get there. And we've had you know, a lot of things I talk about, though, the outsourcing has actually forced us to become much more mature as a customer in terms of our internal, for our people to learn to do that, be disciplined to do it. That's where we've acted in the long term. That's risen us to a higher level.
All right, super. Well, there's about 5 or 6, actually about 7 or 8 more questions that I didn't get to. For those of you who did submit a question, what I would recommend is that when we do a follow-up message to each of you registered, I will make sure that that Katie provides contact information for Dr. Lee as well as for Richard Morrey, so you can reach out to them directly. I mean, what you have here is a wonderful opportunity. As many of you know, there aren't that many actual clients out there that are willing to take the time and they're able to tell their story. So this is a great case study. And as I look at my notes, it not only teaches us a little bit more about outsourcing to China, it's a great case study in the benefits and the value of a strategic perspective from the get-go, avoiding that demo widget. And I'm always interested in seeing how people overcome the cultural / communication challenge. So there's a lot of good stuff here, and I appreciate you both taking the time. Just to wrap, we have recorded this webinar, and we will be posting it to outsourcing.com. So for those of you who have colleagues that may have missed this webinar, there will be a second chance for you and or others to view and to listen to this. Again, Katie, when will you be sending that email out to each of the attendees, Katie?
That email should be coming out tomorrow.
All right, super. So try to be respectful of everyone's time. I think we're maybe 2 or 3 minutes over. Again, Dr. Lee, thank you, and thanks to our friends at Achievo for making this all possible. Richard, wonderful story. Thank you for taking the time and for answering our questions. And to OI members and guests, hopefully this was a worthwhile and productive session for you. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Rich. And thanks to the audience.
Thank you. All right.